Hello, and welcome to our weekly live broadcast where we share some tea together and a little bit of tea wisdom. This week we're a little bit late. We had some technical difficulties, but we're here. Hopefully, you also stayed around. We'll start with some tea, some 3 bowls of tea. I hope you have some tea, that you're safe and happy and comfortable and have a nice place to drink some tea together with all of us around the world who are joining this broadcast, and some peace and quiet as well. So that was very nice. I hope you enjoyed also some peace and delicious tea. First, once again, to just announce for those who don't know, we have the first ever online tea course coming up. Very excited about this. In fact, these broadcasts are kind of the impetus for this, the design and creation of this course. In the past years, we've never really thought about doing an online course because sharing tea together, sitting together, that is such a fundamental part of learning about tea, being able to also drink the same tea, touch the same tea. But these broadcasts have gone really well, and they've also highlighted another benefit of doing an online course, which is that the teachings can very much land in the space where they will thrive, hopefully. So it's one thing to go to a course and take a retreat, but then you have to come back and figure out how that all amalgamates into your ordinary life. But with this course, the teachings will be landing in your ordinary life, and you'll be able to fit them to your schedule and fit them to your house and your life, and there's a power in that. Also, secondly, this online course can maybe reach some people who can't come physically for whatever reason to a course that's happening in person. So there are some wonderful benefits, and the course is going to be engineered to highlight those benefits, and it certainly will be also architected for both old students and new students. So whether you're starting a tea practice or you want to deepen your tea practice, a lot of teachings that some of you have heard before, actually in Zen we've heard nothing before, so we always stay beginners. But even so, those teachings will be restructured in a whole different framework, and that might offer new insight into them. And then there'll be some new teachings, and then there will be all the foundation that's needed actually for you to start a tea practice as well. And all you need is a bowl and some tea. You could use a rice bowl, but tea bowl of course would be better, but rice bowls if that's all you have, and some hot water of course. If you want, you could also pick up a side handle pot and a kettle. That would be even better. You'll have then everything that you really need. But you can go through this course with just a bowl. So we're really excited. It's from July 18th to the 24th, and we'll put the link below, and you can head over there. I think it's teahutcourses.com. So you can go to teahutcourses.com and sign up. And when you sign up, actually, the course is going to be a week, but as I said, it's designed to land in your home, in your space. So the schedule of it's going to be very interesting because it's going to be 2 hours a day for 7 days, and I'm going to give voluntary homework. So if you want to, there'll be meditation instructions, etc. So you could turn this into like a 7-day little tea retreat in your home. But when you sign up, you'll have access to the course actually for a month. So you could also just watch the videos in your own time, watch only part of them, or watch and rewatch them over the course of a month. And there'll be a forum, and the forum will be moderated, and we'll answer questions. So you'll be able to learn at your own pace, whether it be an intense 7-day retreat or it be slowly over the course of a month. And it's very exciting, and we hope that it is something that inspires all of us, and we all learn a lot together. And then if it does go well, which I'm sure it will, we'll maybe do more of these in the future, and maybe some more themed ones, like perhaps a Gong Fu Tea online workshop or something like that. Okay. Today, I thought I would just continue the weekly unpacking of a slogan. It's I think a good format for these short teachings, and allows you something to think about. Remember, teachings are not stances. They're not me telling you the way things are. They're just invitations to explore. They're questions. So each week we have some slogan, some small thing to unpack, and we can drink some tea and think about it and apply it to our life and perhaps come up with some wisdom. This week, another of my favorite slogans, which is a weed is a treasure and a treasure is a weed. You can see this in scrolls in Japanese Zen centers. A weed is a treasure and a treasure is a weed. There's a lot in these slogans. Like our slogan last week, I told you I could only unpack some of it. There's lots to unpack in this. You can spend years unpacking it and not be done or exhaust its wisdom and power. So all I can do is just maybe start and unpack a few aspects of this. You have to go and put this in your bowl and steep it and drink it and work with it. So the first part, a weed is a treasure, there's a lot of ways you can unpack this one, far more than I can do in this limited time frame. The first is something very central to tea, which is, weeds are things that a lot of people walk by. They don't notice. The ordinary plants that aren't fancy, that aren't attractive. And tea teaches us to find the extraordinary in the ordinary. So tea isn't really about going off somewhere or bringing some grand thing. It's about celebrating the most ordinary thing, which is tea. It's about celebrating a moment, a simple moment. And in doing so, practicing celebrating all moments. There's a saying which is a little bit subtle because it's all twisted up in that delicious Zen way, which is that to see the extraordinary as extraordinary is ordinary, and to see the ordinary as extraordinary is actually extraordinary. In other words, everybody sees the extraordinary as extraordinary. When it's extraordinary, everybody can see that it's extraordinary. That's ordinary. But to be able to see the ordinary as extraordinary, that's actually extraordinary. And we all had this when we were children. It's one of the lost treasures that we have to reclaim in our spiritual journey. It's a symptom of spiritual progress that wonder and that childlike awe and that wow come back, and you begin to celebrate and love ordinary things. So you don't walk by weeds anymore. You don't walk by the ordinary things anymore. Then, of course, a weed also symbolizes a challenge. And the art of living is that the challenges are all consumed. They are all growth. They are grist for the mill. So every day is full of challenges. And those challenges are all utilized to grow. If they are consumed, they are treasures. They are treasures because they unlock Dharma gates. Because they test our practice. Because they make us stronger. Because they call us to be better people. They summon us to stand up and face them. And through that process, we are transformed. So all those weeds really are treasures. One thing you'll find in common amongst all great people, whether they be athletes or musicians or poets or business leaders, anybody who is very successful, you will find one thing that they all share, and that's a thirst for challenge. They don't just accept challenges, they are hungry for it because they have developed an ability to utilize challenge as growth, to utilize it to dig down and bring out more than they thought they had, or than they thought they were capable of. So all those weeds, in terms of the challenges in the day, those are all treasures because they unlock all of that. Actually, every day is filled with challenges and filled with joy. And if you can turn the joy requires you to notice it. And one of the big barriers that gets in the way of noticing the joy that is there every day is when you haven't yet developed an orientation towards the challenges such that they are viewed as growth, such that they are viewed as treasures. When the challenges are viewed as bad and very unwanted, then in your day, that will overwhelm and you won't notice the joy on many days. But actually every day there are challenges, and the challenges are opportunities to grow, and there's joy if you notice it. And the more that you turn the challenges into opportunities to grow, the more you will also notice the joy. Noticing the joy requires also other skills, but one of the barriers to noticing the joy is that you aren't turning the challenges into growth, and then the challenges loom and the joy is adumbrated by them and difficult to see. So weeds are treasures is a part of making life an art, is to use all the weeds that are there in your soup. Be nourished by them. And sometimes a treasure is a weed. A treasure is a weed. Of course, the things that we treasure, if they are possessions, then we will be attached to them, and that attachment will prevent us from realizing our Buddha nature, from expressing and recognizing and hearing below the frequency of separation. So we will be blocked by that attachment. And then if it's not a possession, it's a character trait, your treasures will then of course result in pride. And you'll start thinking your pants are fancy and that you have figured something out, which is the antithesis of wisdom. Wisdom is knowing you're an idiot and knowing that you don't know anything. And the beginner's mind, prajna, pra means before, now is knowledge, right? Beginner's mind, empty and humble and receptive and open and listening. So in that way, the things that we treasure often are really the weeds, because they are in the way. And the weeds are often the things that actually are what moves us forward. And then this whole slogan you can step back from, and there's something to unpack, which is, we've talked about this, is so long as the mind is separating things into weeds and treasures at all, there's a filter, a delusion between you and absolute truth. And you then get caught in a cycle of evaluating experience as good or bad and reacting accordingly. When experience, actually the quality in a phenomenon is not in that phenomenon, it's in your mind. The Buddha said, the road cares not if it's paved in dung or gold. So I used the example a couple of weeks ago of durian and said, durian is disgusting. The disgustingness we just assume is in the durian, but obviously it's not, or everyone would find it disgusting. Some people love it. I think they're crazy, those people, because it's disgusting, but actually it's just disgusting to me. It's a relative truth, it's not an absolute truth. So understanding those differences is important too. So there's something about this slogan that is like poking at the whole system of evaluation and asking us to reflect upon it. Not necessarily to throw it away, but to understand its motivations and the way that it works, and the way that it blindsides us, and the way that it gets in the way that we assume that our filters are real, when in fact they are just interpretive models between reality and us. So this a weed is a treasure and a treasure is a weed. This slogan is very powerful. You can think about it some more and think about the weeds in your life and think about the treasures in your life, and if they are actually bondages, and if the weeds are actually fertilizer. You can think about these things and and contemplate them and apply them and explore this idea. Questions?
Amitabh is from India, is asking, my question for Buddha is, how do I wake up from what I am not?
The question is, how do I wake up from what I am not? This is a very deep and powerful and very good question, and difficult to answer. On an absolute level, there's no need to wake up from anything. The world is already awake. On a more relative level, the answer is stillness. When water is turbid, it's filled with mud, you put the glass of water, if you want the water to clarify, you want it to separate from that which it's not, you just put it still. The moment the water stops moving, it starts separating from that which is not. That which is not starts to sink, and the water starts to clear and rise. And we are similar to this. Sometimes my teacher, during meditation instructions, at the end of like 45 minutes of meditation instructions, he would sometimes say, everything that went away during that 45 minutes of meditation is not real, and what is left, that is real. When you sit and be fully present, and you quiet, you become still. Quiet not in terms of the absence of sound, but quiet in terms of stillness, which is the space between things. Automatically, there starts to be space between the things, in terms of objects, the relationships, the identity, the stories, because none of that is in this moment. But there's an absolute level where all of that illusion is also just an eddy in the flow of reality. There are humans, and humans are perceiving separation. That's what they do. The naturalness of humans perceiving separation is like the sounds geckos make, or the squawking of birds, or the hooting of monkeys. Humans are just perceiving separation. And functionally, that's not separate. Those are just eddies on the top of the currents, right? But you have to listen deep enough that you hear the frequencies that are beneath separation. Otherwise, you'll live your life as the wave, and not acknowledge the wisdom and power of the ocean and water, of which you are also made. So there's not something to become. That's the absolute problem with the question, is that how do I separate from that which I'm not? You can't be that which you're not. So you never were joined with it. So there's nothing to do to separate. You by the nature of the question is, right, how do I separate from that which I'm not? You already are separate from that which you are not. It is that which you are not. So in Zen, we are not trying to become something, but rather to be who we are. naturally, to be who we are as ordinary human beings, right? But just not wobble. So somebody asks the Zen master, what is Zen? And he say, when I'm hungry I eat, when I'm tired I sleep. And the student says, everybody does that. And the master say, no, actually, nobody does that. Right? You can't think of it, he's saying like nobody does just that. So you can take the advice of another great Zen master said, when walking, walk, when sitting, sit, but don't wobble. Right? So wobbling is wobbling away from yourself, and that's kind of, I think, what you're asking is how to not wobble, how to not get stuck in the habits of thinking and being that are reflections of habit energy or conditioning or things that lead me away from truth. And the answer to that is, again, as I said, stillness, meditation. My teacher used to always say, right, there are 3 wonderful ways to cultivate yourself spiritually. And you can choose from any one you like. Meditation, or meditation.
Angelica is asking, how do you find peace and resolve with close people in your life who don't wish to evolve, transform, or change?
How do you find peace when other people around you don't want to be peaceful is the question. Welcome to samsara. This is not a place of peace. Again, the weeds are treasures. They are also fuel for growth. Peace is not I think just semantically it can be helpful to distinguish, just for the purpose, let's continue a metaphor of sound. It can be helpful to use this metaphor of semantically distinguishing the difference between quiet and stillness. So quiet is the absence of sound. And that's good. It can remind us of the stillness that's inside of us. However, if your peace is based on quietude, you're in trouble, because no matter where you go in the world nowadays, even you find some mountain monastery, the plane will fly overhead and your peace will be shattered. So that external quietude can be a helpful reminder of the stillness inside of us. It can also be an expression of it, right? But it's not a substitute for stillness. So peace isn't the absence of negative people, right? That's the issue with the whole, we are going to make an ashram based on lala. So we build the ashram and we put lots of flowers. All of that's wonderful. There's nothing inherently wrong with that. As I said, the quietude can be an expression of the inner stillness. So of course a person who is still in an inward way, when they go to create and decorate a space, they will do so. They will create and decorate that space in a way that is beautiful and peaceful, because that is their form of art. Just as if they sing, they will sing peaceful music. If they write poetry, they'll write peaceful poetry. But so they will decorate that way. But sometimes what can happen is like this attempt to like escape. And then it's like, oh, there's a negative person in our holy space. Get him out. And you playing this game of what is pure and impure, and what is peaceful and not, right? And actually, then your peace is dependent completely upon the environment, and you're a pinball. So you are just bounced around and floating on the surface of things, and not rooted in the peace that is vertical, that is down in the moment and immune to the vicissitudes of life. So this is back to the earlier question about that person saying like, how do I disconnect from that which I'm not? When you're rooted in your Buddha nature, right? When you're rooted in your truth, when you're hearing the ocean and not just hearing the frequencies of the wave, you're not just hearing separation, but you're hearing the frequencies of connection. Then, and they're there. They're just inside of you. You just need to listen. And that external quietude can help that listening to facilitate it. But then the idea is to connect as much as possible to that, be rooted in it, and then such that there's peace no matter what is happening outside. And in the meantime, those of us, myself included, who have not yet reached that state where we are rooted that deeply, we take the opportunity to learn from and grow from the times when we fall into the mud. There are opportunities to learn how to get back up, right? Because there ultimately, there's no success or failure other than in this moment. Am I on the path right now? If I am, success. If not, get back up. And there are also opportunities to feel there's great wisdom in feeling the pain of being alive and being able to empathize with other people's pain and have compassion and know what it's like to fail and get back up. And so each time you get up, you're stronger. 999 falling downs is 1,000 opportunities to get up. And so we just can work on this. And it is helpful to have some space, literal space and time to practice connecting to that stillness. But the idea is to connect in a way that the vicissitudes of life do not knock us about. If we connect to our Buddha nature, if we connect to that which is beyond the vicissitudes of life, and then we'll be rooted. So this is a difference. And also in the meantime, you can recognize the mind that is judging another person as like not peaceful. That mind is not peaceful, right? That's a filter also of like spiritual people and non-spiritual people or something. That's not real. And you see your filters, you can see them for what they are. The pickpocket meets the saint and sees only his pockets, and the saint sees the pickpocket and sees only his innocence. So there's always those filters as well, and those judgments, and letting go of that is in itself a kind of peace. Letting go of the need to have those labels attached to people. It's better to attach those labels, if anything, to just behavior and not to the person, but to the behavior, right? But even the behavior, as you meditate more, and this is good news. It can suck in the beginning, but it's actually good news. The more you meditate, the more you will realize that the quality and condition of your mind is 100% your responsibility. When you start out, before you meditate, most humans, if we are living on the surface of things, we usually, like on most days, we attribute, in an unconscious state, we attribute 90% of my state of mind I attribute to my environment. So if I'm angry, it's because what other people are doing, or it's what's going on around me, or it's you did it, you made me angry, and on and on and on. You start meditating, and then you start being like, okay, well, you know what? I'll share. I'll like half and half. I get like, okay, yes, you're right. Half was you did that terrible thing, but actually, I also participated in the anger. There was a decision. It might have been a momentary decision. That's part of the meditation and the subtlety and learning to watch your own mind. You're seeing subtle things that were too fast or too subtle for you to notice before you start listening. You start noticing them, and you realize, wait a minute, I'm also a part of this. And eventually, you will come to realize, and you should realize this on your own. Don't take my word for it. It doesn't matter what some dude on YouTube said. Your truth is the only truth. And you will realize, though, that 100% of the state of your mind is your own responsibility. That's good news. If it wasn't that, if that wasn't true, you would be doomed to be always a slave to the conditions that were happening around you, right? But actually, there is a power, and there is an orientation, and that is a power, and it's always your own most power. After you lose all other powers, even if you're completely paralyzed, the one power you have left is the power to choose how you orient towards what's happening, no matter what it is, right? They look at the great Nelson Mandela was imprisoned so long, and so he was in a sense paralyzed, and yet his orientation towards that was very powerful. And there's a lesson in that, right? So we always can choose. In fact, another slogan that has served me very well in my life is just that. Our orientation towards the issue is the issue. There is no issue other than how you're orienting towards the issue. That is the issue. The only thing that matters is how you're oriented towards what's happening, not what's happening. And the more you begin to take that step back and realize that the only thing I should be focusing on, the only issue for me is my orientation to what's happening, not what's happening. The more you focus in that area, the more you'll be liberated from the slavery to reaction to what's happening outside, and to the illusion that what's happening outside is responsible for your state of mind. Right? That's why a person sitting on a bench and 9 people walk by, they experience 9 different things. Right? So some people find that person very attractive. Some person find them very ugly. Some people don't even notice. Some people think they're dressed weirdly. Right? Some people love a Buddha. Some people hate a Buddha. Some people think Buddha's weird. And I'm weird, lovable, hateable. I'm all of those things. It's like the durian. It's not really, if you like a Buddha or dislike a Buddha, that's really in you, not in me. There are certainly things in me to dislike. There's lots I don't like about me. And there are things to like about me as well. So it could be just about what you see on that particular day. It could also be, though, your own way you read it, right? One person goes to the mountain and they find it the most peaceful place, and they're so happy to look at the stars and be away from the city. And the other person comes to the mountain, they're like, wow, the glory, all the stars, and they dance throughout the night. And the other person goes to the mountain and they're freaked out. It's so scary. Look at the shadows and the trees, and there's a monster, and they're freaking out. So is the mountain scary? Is it joyous? Is it peaceful? Those are the things we bring. And so the more you take responsibility for your state of mind, the more you are empowered to not be a slave to reaction. And you also, as you meditate and you learn to experience what my reactions do to myself, that actually I'm the first victim of my anger. That before I lash out, and anger actually isn't even the issue. If you're getting into analysis, anger is an issue I have. I have a temper. And anger actually isn't an issue. Anger actually can sharpen you, make you present. It's, athletes learn to channel that anger, and they can jump further, run faster, throw the ball further. What's the problem is violence. By violence, I don't just mean physical violence. I mean could be oral violence or mental violence, saying hurtful things, doing hurtful things, or even thinking hurtful things. That's what I mean by violence. So that's a reaction to anger. Yeah, but another thing you realize though, is that when I get angry, before the violence, whether it be mental violence or words or my fist or whatever, before the violence, I'm burning. Anger, violence anger and violence, it's a very unpleasant state. There's tremendous suffering in it, in every way, physical, mental, emotional, the whole. It's a revolt against the way things are. It's a disassociation with reality. It's literally physical. Over time it could cause cancer or who knows what. I mean, it's you can feel that it's bad for you, and so you realize I'm the first victim of my emotions before anyone else, and then you begin to also realize that my mind is my state of mind is not dictated from the outside. And as you meditate more, you start to take the blame more. And eventually you do reach a place where it's like you 100%, I understand 100% that my reaction to your behavior was my reaction to your behavior. And that someone else might have laughed instead of getting angry. Right? So that which you are deeming as unpeaceful behavior in people around you, if you were in a state of complete presence and peace, that behavior wouldn't ruffle peace at all. Peace is more powerful than any movement. Like, look at the Earth from space. It's a beautiful, glowing blue ball, so peaceful. Movement that's happening on the surface is happening within that peace. And then out around that, in infinity, is space. Quiet, peaceful space. And within every atom too, down to the small. Just like in the big, also in the small. Down is mostly space as well, and peace. So another way of looking at it is like this. If I'm fully present in this moment right now, you can join me in this moment if you breathe and be present right here in this moment, my voice, this sound right now, these words now, here, now. If I'm present and I look over at Connor and he is thinking about the future, and I can tell because he's like writing what he's going to do tomorrow. And maybe he's even talking to himself. That's how lost he is in his planning. 7 o'clock, I think and he's making plans, right? So, from my experience, in the present moment, because the present moment is all of reality, he hasn't left the present moment. From my perspective, he is right now, right here, he is planning for the future. Or I could say he is lost in the future now. But not really. He hasn't passed through some time portal. He has not traveled to the future. But right now, his mind is lost in the future, not even really lost. This goes back to my earlier question. As I said, somebody asked, how do you separate from that which you're not? There's nothing really to separate from, you see. He can't go anywhere. There's an illusion that he's gone somewhere, but that illusion's in his head, not in mine. So from my perspective, he's still present. From the perspective of one who is present, all is present. So in the same way, from the perspective of the Buddha, all is peaceful. You can't disturb the Buddha's peace. there is literally so many stories like about that. The Buddha had many enemies, a lot of them. Everybody who says anything publicly immediately makes enemies. I could go on a radio show, and I've never been in the public eye before. I've never said anything publicly, and I get on the radio show and they say, okay, here's this new fellow, Buddha. What is your message? And I say my only message, and all I have to say for the whole of my life is just be happy. That's my message. Be happy. Just those two words, be happy. And they will say, okay, now we go to callers, and caller number 11, blah, blah, blah. And caller number 11, yes, hello, you're on the air with Buddha. And he'll say, I don't agree with this message, be happy. So it doesn't matter how simple the message, somebody will against it. And a lot of people were against the Buddha. He was shaking things up. And so they tried to ruffle him all the time. And so there are a lot of these stories, right? And his peace always like sees him through. One very famous one, they had a woman strap wood to her belly, and she went to the place where the Buddha was giving a lecture when the kings were there. Everybody he had royal students. So the king is there, and the princes, and the whole town, and all the monks, and this big congregation of very influential people. And she comes in shouting, you call yourself a monk, you're no Shramana, this is your baby, you leave me and not take care of your baby. And the Buddha just say, you come sit down, my dear. Is that so? And his peace, they say his peace was so, this is mythological, it's a legend, right? So in the legend, his peace was so powerful that she inside began to grow very frightened. And she got so scared and was shaking so much that the boards fell down. And then he invited her to sit down, and of course she became a student afterwards, right? But the meaning of the legend of even the boards falling down, the meaning of the legend is that that peace that we cultivate, right, such that we're peaceful no matter what's happening, that peace can also be very influential on others, right? And this goes back to our slogan today, right? I said, I discussed the problems with the mind that's always interpreting all experience as good or bad. And I'll leave you with this question and one more story, and then we're going to wrap it up for today. Very good questions, but the question is this for you to contemplate. So long as you are constantly interpreting, evaluating experience as good and bad, how will you attain peace such that you're okay with whatever happens? And the second one is another Zen version of the story that I just said, because I feel like two stories out of many, many, many hundred such stories. But there's a story of a Zen monk who had a temple near a village, and he was very well known, and all the villagers came, and he would give lectures once a week, and they would sometimes have sesshin retreats. And in the village, a young 15-year-old girl got pregnant. And very ashamed, she told her parents that she was going to have a baby, and they were very angry about who is the father and shouting at her. And finally, she told them it is the monk. And the last time we did the retreat, he did this to me, and this is his baby. So when the baby was born, the family stomped up the hill in the middle of a big gathering of all the villagers and shouted, "You dirty monk, you violated our daughter, and this is your son, you take care of him." And the monk said only, "Is that so?" And all the villagers left. They are so ashamed. How did we ever listen to this monk? He's not what we thought. And they all left. And he took that baby and loved that little boy with all his heart. And for the next few years, somehow he scraped by very meagerly now, because there's no donations coming to the meager life. But he has the joy of this beautiful boy to keep him company, at least. And then when the boy was about 4 years old, the young girl in the village, she's now a little bit older, a little more mature. She comes to her parents and says, look, I lied. Actually, the baby's father is the grocer's son, and we want to be married, and we want our baby back. And so the parents and the villagers get a bunch of flowers and a bunch of stuff for prayers and go up the mountain to the temple and, oh, Master, we are so sorry. We were completely wrong, and that baby that you now love, that you've raised yourself, we're going to take away from you. It is not your son, actually. And the old Zen master replied, is that so? So you can think about this story and think about the slogan today. And again, don't regard any of these teachings as philosophical stances or answers, right? Answers aren't as good as questions. Better to have a question that you can't answer than an answer that you can't question. So these are invitations to explore, to think, to question, to doubt, to wonder, to explore and integrate. Maybe over some tea. Have a great week. Stay safe. Stay peaceful.